All right, thank you so much. I think we're really learning a lot today about communication, how to combat misinformation, how to be more positive with our communication about climate change to inspire movement from consumers and beyond. With that, actually, is a really good transition into our next session, which is kind of back on our brand track. We're really excited to reveal some literally brand new, hot off the press research that we just conducted in combination with IPG Mediabrands around how should brands communicate about their sustainability messaging. I think there's a lot of confusion around how they should or shouldn't. So we're really excited to reveal some of this research. And anyone who's been probably at any sustainable event in advertising has seen Bryan probably speak numerous times. He's definitely one of the premier leaders in our industry, championing sustainability initiatives as his role of Global Chief Sustainability Officer at IPG Mediabrands. So please welcome Bryan. Oh yeah, you take the clicker, here you go.
Good to see you, my friend.
You too. So just a little background about some of this research. So we've been partnering with IPG Mediabrands for a number of years on kind of working together on how we can make our industry more sustainable. Martin and I spoke together at Climate Week, actually, downstairs in this same building. But we wanted to kind of, a little bit what we're talking about today is expand our scope beyond just our digital advertising industry. And we've heard from a lot of brands that there's, they're not sure exactly how to message about sustainability, if they should or shouldn't, how it impacts purchase behaviors, and then even when they do communicate about it, how do they, even on their packaging, et cetera. So I'm going to let Martin go into a little more detail on the research itself and some of the results, but we're really excited to reveal this to you and hopefully something you can bring back both to your agencies and your brands and beyond.
Well, huge shout to you, by the way. When we talk about leaders in sustainability, that you created this space and this event, I mean, I am beyond honored to be here, but excited that we've continued the partnership over all these years. I think it's really important to note, when we discussed, or when you shared at the beginning of the day today, we're talking about not just the 3% of emissions that are generated by media, and we're working on that. With Sharethrough and Equativ to reduce those emissions within media and activation of media. But we also need to think about what we are putting out there in the world and communicating to consumers. That 97% of impact that we can have is huge. So we wanted to do some research. And this was really important to me and to the team and to Frank for us to look at, again, that 97%. What can we achieve when we use the powers of persuasion that we have to positively influence consumers? So we started with a survey, and we got some really great insights. I'll unpack that survey and the methodology in the next slide. But I wanted to lead with the fact that people believe it's important. This is a non-negotiable for consumers. 3/4 of the audience that we polled saw it as directly impacting climate change, directly impacts their human health and their family's health. When your health is at risk, there is nothing you won't do to impact that. It's the one thing that we run towards, and it's the one thing, obviously, that sells. Sustainability is a consideration because people see it as intrinsically linked to their well-being. So we know that brands have a really important role to play in this because they need to take the action within their industries, just like we're doing in media, that 3%. All those other industries that we support with advertising have a huge potential to reduce emissions in the verticals that they represent. And brands are doing it, and they're telegraphing it to consumers through these seals that you see up on the screen. You probably recognize some of these. I don't know, probably some of your clients have these seals represented on their packs and in their advertising. So we wanted to better understand, well, what's going on with these? Do people get it? Is it useful? Is this actually driving what we always say at IPG Mediabrands is profit through purpose? We know that by doing the right thing and investing in sustainability can drive bottom line growth. So we wanted to prove it. So what are the features that matter to people? That's the first thing that we looked at when it relates to sustainability, and are they really clear on what those labels mean? When they see that seal, the Rainforest Alliance or Energy Star, do they understand what it means? And finally, how do they communicate about it to consumers, brands? So this was a really comprehensive approach that we took. Not just a survey, but we wanted to actually look at a conjoined analysis of consumer response to real prompts related to product features, brands, and price. So this was something that we looked at 3 verticals that we thought were really important to look at. Groceries for food, and I'll explain why in a moment. Personal care products, and clothing. And what are the different features within each of these that is going to actually drive intent to purchase? So let's get into it. The features that are really motivating to people. Again, going back to each of those that we looked at in the conjoined analysis, what actually motivated folks? This was really, really heartening to see. When we pulled this data, 2/3 of folks not only care about it, they're willing to put their money against it. They're willing to prioritize brands that prioritize climate action, and that's exactly what we need to be seeing. So this is very compelling to a brand marketer that's considering, do I need to invest in climate action with my brands? Yeah, you do, because 2/3 of your audience is expecting it, and they're gonna pay more. All right, let's dig into the 3 verticals that we looked at. Now, why groceries? We picked groceries because we know 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions comes from farms, from land use, and from how you at your kitchen table make choices. You eating more meat? Are you reducing food waste? It all adds up. So that industry and individual alignment is really important to unpack here. And that's exactly what we're focusing on here. And it's good to see of our audiences, and I didn't mention this, but it's Canada and the US across all demographics. In the Canadian and US market, we saw that 46% of audiences are willing to pay more for one or more of the features that we prompted them with. And it was really interesting to see the ethical treatment of animals, cage-free eggs and free-range beef, that kind of thing. Super important. It doesn't mean that the others aren't as important, but there are a number of those that people consider, like organic and regenerative organic and regenified. Each of these have different meanings for consumers, and it's all adding up to climate action that they're willing to pay more for, to the tune of 46%. Why did we look at personal care products? Well, we know that landfill and plastic all contributes adversely to climate change. We need to tackle that. We need to tackle that in personal care products, and consumers agree. Willing to pay more, 44% of the audiences that we looked at. I was a little surprised by this. I don't know about you, but the refillable packaging was the most important feature that people wanted to see in their personal care products. I thought it would probably have been plastic-free packaging. But this is a really cool branding opportunity for marketers to consider a unique product value prop in the packaging. This is something that could really differentiate at shelf. And again, consumers are expecting it, and they want to see it, more and more of that. For clothing. Now, why did we pick clothing? Same reason we picked groceries, because you're getting your raw materials from land use, cotton and wool, etc. 41% of the audience that we polled agreed, yep, I'm going to pay more for that. And they want to see that these are responsibly sourced materials. So evaluating your supply chain, marketers, super important. Organic materials, maybe the least, but still 16% of your audience wants to know that the ingredients going into the clothing that they wear on their bodies is contributing to climate action. So when we looked at the 46 and the 41% and all this sort of made us think, well, how many folks are actually across all three, no matter what, they're willing to pay for a sustainability feature, and they're willing to pay more for that product. And we identified that about a quarter of the audience is willing to pay no matter what. They want to see sustainability front and center in the products that they buy. That's huge. When you look at audience segmentation for your marketing plan, you don't often see such a large percentage. So every marketer should take note. You have a willing and ready eco-spender audience, ready to invest. And when you look at the demographics, each of these represent the percentage of that demographic that are an eco-spender. So the highest being millennials. I myself am an eco-spender, as you can imagine. I'm in that 29%, so a third of millennials. A little less for Gen Z, not surprised by that. Spending power potentially could impact that. But I don't know a marketer that isn't thinking about these cohorts. So important to think about, huge audience, and there's a willingness there to invest in your brand's products if you're more sustainable. All right, let's get into the seals. So we know that brands need to talk about this because 92% of consumers that we polled said, yep, I want to know what you're doing on climate action. I need to know that you align with my brand, the brand aligns with my personal values. And it's across every single vertical, pretty consistent. There's not one vertical that we polled that was substantively less. So it's important that they communicate about it. So how do they do that? Well, you can't grade your own homework, right? So the seals become really important because it's that third-party NGO that's working on creating the standards that the entire vertical and that entire industry can align to. So we know it's valued, we know it's important, but it's really difficult for our audiences to spot, to understand what those seals mean. So 74%, yep, it's important to have these features with seals, et cetera. They want to see them on pack. But again, these all represent a gap in knowledge. 85% of people don't know what Certified B Corp is. They've probably seen it, but they have no idea what it means. However, Energy Star, interestingly, pretty high from an awareness standpoint. Only 39% are not aware of it or what it means. So it makes sense, though, when you think about it. When you're making a big purchase like an appliance, you're probably paying a lot of attention. It's been around for a long time, Energy Star, and it also aligns really nicely with our value proposition of profit through purpose because they tell you about how much money you're going to save by buying that product. So, and this shows the gap from total lack of awareness in red versus I don't get it. I know what it is. I've seen it. I can recognize it. So again, it's following a similar pattern there from the leaping bunny being the least aware, and that's the ethical treatment of animals and testing on animals for personal care products. So again, Energy Star, that's a great case study. You can see that there is a lot of awareness and a lot of understanding. So we should probably look at that as a case study. So where does this information show up? When a consumer sees that seal, where do they want to see that? Where do they want to be educated and understand when they make that product decision? Well, it wasn't surprising as well, product pack. So at shelf, whether it's physical or digital, people want to see these seals. They want to understand what that brand is investing in. But also importantly is advertising.
Yeah, I think this is one of those stats that was surprising in the sense that it's rare that consumers tell us they want to be advertised to or toward. We're an advertising community. I think we all know that a lot of consumers hate advertising though. But this is like an invitation from consumers to advertise towards them and help educate them on the sustainable benefits of your brand or even the seals that you use, et cetera, which I think was a really key takeaway for for brands and thinking about how they communicate this beyond just their packaging, but also in their advertising. And actually, if you dig into, on the next slide, the demographic breakdown, once again, you saw this millennial audience specifically showing 80% want advertisements to include more of this education on sustainable benefits. So I think this is one of those key learnings to take away for brands about how to think about this question of, first of all, do I or don't I mention our sustainable benefits? We've seen it's impacted purchase decisions, and consumers want to be educated about it.
And listen, I mean, I've gone to enough of these conferences to hear the questions and feel the anxiety from marketers on, how do I do this? It's sensitive. I mean, we heard from the last panel about greenwashing. It's riddled with anxiety for consumers and brands as well. So I think what's really important here, though, is to recognize when you do it right and you invest in product that can align to those third-party vetted and verified seals, removes a lot of risk. And there's a lot of reward. People are willing to pay more. And two, really, at the end of the day, education is so important. Brands need to communicate about this. They need to make sure that consumers are aware. Consumers want to hear this. And advertising is a really important way for us to use the power of our industry to communicate the critical climate action that's needed. And I'll just end with this. I think we talk a lot about the power of partnership, and a lot of what you see on our key takeaways and the to-dos focuses on that. The CMO and the CSO need to break down those silos, and they need to talk. They need to work together because it's a virtuous cycle. When you have the sustainability claims, you then can feed that back into the marketing engine, more profitability, and then that also works towards driving emissions down. So it's a mutual benefit. And you've got a huge opportunity in that eco-spender audience, 25% or quarter of the audience. Partnership, private NGO. These seals are poorly funded. That's why education's low, because they don't have huge marketing budgets. They need our support. They need our expertise. They need the brilliance of organizations like Epic to help them move this along. We have to continue to focus on how we can support the good actors that are focusing on creating these standards, because this is the way we unlock a reduction of that 97%. And advertising, again, it's a key vehicle.
And I hope if there's, I know there's a broad range of different companies in the room today, but hopefully this gives you some ammo, like when those questions do come up from brands, questioning what they should focus on. Or I used to be in brainstorms with brands when I was agency side around what we're going to be messaging about. Hopefully you can use some of this information to further that communication of how they talk about their sustainable benefits, or even more of a push to be more sustainable. We're going to be publishing these results in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be, I think, we'll most likely be sending out a newsletter to anyone that attended, so you can actually download these and share them yourselves with brands, because I know these questions come up a lot in meetings, and hopefully you can do sessions with your own brands and partners about how to communicate this, and hopefully this is some helpful fodder to bring back to each of your organizations. But I want to thank Martin and the Magna Trials team and everyone for putting together this research. It was a big labor of love, but we're really excited about the results are actually very actionable. So thanks again to Martin and team.